And let me make sure I'm not miscommunicating here, because these promises only come to fulfillment through Christ. Okay, if you get that. Here, God promises these things, the people reject this promise. Okay, but later on through Christ, the same promises are made, and this time the people are able to say yes. Okay, so the covenant at Mount Sinai. Exodus 19. You have seen for yourselves how I brought you here to myself. Therefore, if you hearken to my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my special possession, dearer to me than all other people. Though all the earth is mine, you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. The people all answered together, everything the Lord has said we will do. The Lord said, I am coming to you in a dense cloud. Go to the people and have them sanctify themselves. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. On the morning of the third day, there were peals of thunder and lightning, and a heavy cloud over the mountain. Mount Sinai was all wrapped in smoke, for the Lord had come down it in fire. Then God delivered all these commandments. I, the Lord and your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Right? And so we go through the 10 commandments. Okay? Now, this is the betrothal. They say yes to this. Right? And he delivers the 10 commandments. And once again, they say yes. Okay? So before and after, they are free for the first time ever. They're free from the slavery of idolatry, free to enter into a relationship with the one true God. Okay? They've been free from their idols. Make sense? Okay. Now, God wants them to become a kingdom of priests, and he wants to be united with his people on the third day. Hallelujah. Well, and we understand, therefore, that the heart of the covenant, the marriage vows, okay, is the 10 commandments. Okay, so let's Deuteronomy 8, verses 1 to 3. Be careful to follow every command I am giving you today, so that you may live and increase, and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath. The Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Okay? This phrase, it's confused a lot of people. Man does not live by bread alone. Some people see it as a contradiction. Well, if man does not live by bread alone, then how is it significant or important? Why does Jesus call himself the bread of life? Right? It almost seems contradictory. But here we understand that the commandments are understood as the 10 words of God. Right? It's kind of like when you say, "Can I have a word with you?" Right? Do you expect someone to go over and then give you one word? No. It's always, "Can I have a word?" means an entire conversation, or like the 10 commandments are the 10 words. From the cross, Jesus gave his 7 last words. And one of those words, right, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, that's all one word. So hopefully you understand what we mean here by the word, okay, in the old covenant. So the heart of the covenant is the commandments, okay, the 10 commandments, the Decalogue. And the people entered into the covenant freely and affirmed their vows after they entered as well. And the problem is, even when they are warned, right? Even when they're warned, make sure you keep my commandments. We know that they're going to break the commandments. We know they're going to break the covenant, right? But the only way to understand the commandments is from within the covenant. You can understand that if you are married to someone, that person has the right to say to you, you know what, from now on, now that we're actually married, I don't want you going over to that other guy's house and staying the night. Right? That makes sense. From now on, now that we're married, I want to make sure I can spend time with you, and we're going to have like a date night every week. Right? I'm first in your life. Right? No other guys come before me, and we're having a date night every week. Right? What else? You got to take my name. Huh? Do you see where I'm going with this? Hopefully. Okay. You can also see that when God gives these commandments, it has to be understood from within the covenant. If there's no covenant, then we can say, I can see whoever I want, right? I can go and do whatever I want. I'll spend my day off, any way I want. I don't have to spend it with you. But if you've made a covenant and you've given yourself to the other, now those vows mean something. And God has expectations of his people, and the people have expectations of God. That makes sense, right? Okay, so let's go on. You'll notice in italics there I've got Matthew 4. This is when Jesus is in the desert, and it says, the tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Okay, Jesus knows what happened in the wilderness. They were tempted because they were hungry. Jesus is in the wilderness too, for 40 days. On the last day, when he is very hungry, is when the devil appears and tempts him, right? And he tempts him in the same way Israel has been tempted in the desert, with physical suffering, right? You're physically suffering. These round stones here, they look like bread. Why not just change them into bread? God is powerful enough. Prove it. If you're the Son of God, just tell these stones to become bread. In other words, if you have a sensual desire, a physical senses, right, that you want to eat something, if you want to see something, right, if you want to touch something, give in to your senses, right? And Jesus says, I know better. Man does not live by bread alone. The senses can satisfy a little bit, but ultimately love must reign, right? Ultimately, I've made a commitment. I'm going to do this for 40 days, and I'm not going to quit right now. Okay, does that make sense? So even though we're tempted, like within a marriage situation, to look at something we're not supposed to look at, to touch something we're not supposed to touch, right? To listen to words we're not supposed to listen to. These are sensual attractions, sensual temptations. And Jesus is saying here, he's quoting Deuteronomy, and he's saying this is why they failed, because they let their senses guide them. Are we doing okay for time? Okay. No. Okay, I'll move faster, sorry. Okay, so the ratification of the covenant. When does it actually become consummated? Okay. Exodus 24. Immediately after he conveys all of the commandments to the people, right? So Exodus 20, you'll notice he started, right? Then God delivered all these commandments. I, the Lord, am your God. And then we skip Deuteronomy there and look at Exodus 24. So after he's conveyed all the 10 commandments, plus all the social laws and all the elaboration of all those other laws, it takes several pages. Then we have this ratification of the covenant. Moses takes half of the blood, right, and he put it in a large bowl, and the other half he splashed on the altar. Taking the book of the covenant, he read it aloud to the people, who answered, all that the Lord has said we will heed and do. Then he took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, saying, this is the blood of the covenant, which the Lord has made with you, in accordance with all these words of his. Moses then went up with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and they beheld the God of Israel. Under his feet there appeared to be sapphire tilework, as clear as the sky itself. Yet he did not smite those chosen Israelites. After gazing on God, they could still eat and drink. It's amazing to think, not just Moses, right, but these other guys, the 70 elders, plus these faithful few, get to climb up this mountain, enter a covenant with God, right, and then they get to have a little bit of a marriage banquet, a wedding banquet. They get to eat and drink in the presence of God. That's pretty fantastic. And they get to see him face to face, and no one's killed. That's kind of cool. Two things I need to mention here. The first is that when Moses sprinkles the blood on the altar, it represents God. God is represented by the altar. And then he sprinkles the rest of the blood on the people, because the covenant is between God and the people. Make sense? When we have the same blood as God, we become one blood, one flesh, one blood. If you remember, and I could have done this, I should have done it actually in Genesis, right? When you have Adam talk about his son, this is my flesh and blood. When you share the same flesh and blood, we are family, we are one. That's the unity, right? That's the union that has taken place through the marriage covenant. You've become one. Okay, so that's why the blood has to be spread on both parties. Does that make sense? Are you guys all awake? I'm not putting you to sleep here with this voice. Okay, good. Good, okay. So now, the second thing I needed to tell you about was it. Oh, it says, after gazing on God. that can be a little problematic for us, because as we know, God is pure spirit, especially at this point. This is before the incarnation, right? God is pure spirit. He can choose to manifest himself as a dove, but God is not a dove, right? He can choose to manifest himself as a pillar of cloud, but God is not a cloud. He can choose to manifest himself as a pillar of fire or as tongues of fire, but God is not fire. Does that make sense? These are manifestations of God's presence. And he picks and chooses how he reveals himself. Right? And so we are in the presence of, the people here are in the presence of God. They see his manifestations. They see how he's revealing himself. And he is present in there. But God remains a mystery. God remains a pure spirit, right? Until the incarnation. So even though it talks in language after gazing on God, right? They could still eat and drink. We have to realize they don't see God as like the disciples saw God. Does that make sense? So we just have to be a little careful there. Okay, now we're in the desert, okay? And the wedding banquet didn't take place with every single member of the bride of God, right? Every member of Israel was included in the covenant, but not all partook of that banquet up there. It was only the 70 plus Moses and the other guys. But here in Exodus 16, it says, okay, in the desert, the whole community grumbled. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. They looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they reached the border of Canaan. Isn't that amazing? For 40 years, every day, God is taking care of his beloved, right? Feeding his people through the desert every single day. And what's amazing here is the fact that it was two things, again, I want to tell you. The first thing is that this was bread that had to be collected every day, right? And so every day they witnessed a miracle. This was no ordinary bread, right? But every day they collected. And on the Sabbath, I skipped some of that, but on the Sabbath day, the day before the Sabbath, they had to collect twice as much. And they could take as much as they wanted. So if you were a big eater, you could have like 5 times as much as the next guy. But if you tried to keep some for the next day, it would rot. Right? Had a best before date, right? So it didn't matter how much you wanted to eat, that was fine. Everyone ate to their fill. But you could never keep any for the next day. God is teaching his people. He's teaching them something through this. And it's revealed when Jesus gives us our Father, right? When Jesus tells us, when you pray, say this, give us this day our daily bread. The fact that you are asking every single day for God to satisfy your needs means that you're talking to God every single day. What does that mean? If you talk to someone for every day for 40 years, guess what? You're in a relationship, right?
I hope so.
Then people think, I haven't spoken to God forever. All of a sudden I pray, why didn't God answer my prayer? Well, it's from within the covenant relationship that we have the boldness to ask our beloved. If we don't maintain the covenant, how dare we, right? Ask, do this. It becomes a servile relationship. God becomes our servant, not our beloved. We're mistreating the Lord, and then we can't expect things. Does that make sense? And yet, that makes sense to us, and that's absolutely true. But the interesting thing is that God is merciful anyway. Even though we don't deserve it, he still answers our prayers. He still comes out and feeds us and helps us, even when we shouldn't be asking, right? Because we're not keeping our end. But he is always faithful to his end. So that's extremely important. Did I say 2 things? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so Psalm 78. But they continued to sin against him, rebelling in the wilderness against the Most High. They willfully put God to the test by demanding the food they craved.